You are tired. I can hear it in your silence. I can see it in the way you look at the ceiling at 3 a.m. when the rest of the world is asleep. You are doing everything right. At least that is what they told you. You wake up early. You drink the coffee. You make the lists. You grind while your friends are partying. You work weekends. You sacrifice sleep. You sacrifice relationships. And you sacrifice your peace of mind because you believe in the promise. The promise that says, if you just work harder than the next guy, you will win. But look at where you are standing right now. You are exhausted. You are burnt out. And the terrifying truth is that you are not seeing the results. You are running on a treadmill, sweating buckets, heart pounding, but you haven't moved an inch forward. In fact, you might even feel like you are falling behind people who don't work half as hard as you do. It makes you angry, doesn't it? It makes you question everything. Stick with me for the next few minutes. I am going to tell you a story about a farmer named Elias that is going to dismantle everything you thought you knew about hard work. This isn't just a story, it is the answer to the question that keeps you awake at night. Welcome back to Motivational Head. We build the mindset that builds the life. If you are ready to stop forcing success and start actually achieving it, do yourself a favor right now. Take 1 second, click that subscribe button, and turn on the bell. We are building a community of winners here, and I don't want you to miss the one insight that could change your trajectory. Let's get into it. Let me introduce you to a man named Elias. Elias was a good man. He was the kind of guy you would want as a neighbor. He was strong, he was disciplined, and he had a work ethic that would put a machine to shame. Elias inherited a massive plot of land in a valley known for its stubborn soil. The ground was hard, packed tight by years of neglect, and the sun in that valley was unforgiving. But Elias wasn't afraid. He looked at that dry, cracked earth, and he said to himself, I will defeat this soil with my sweat. I will outwork nature itself. And he meant it. Every single morning, Elias was up at 3:30 a.m. It was pitch black outside. The rooster hadn't even thought about waking up yet. Elias would drink his black coffee, lace up his heavy boots, and walk out into the dark. By the time the sun peeked over the horizon, Elias had already been working for 2 hours. He was tilling, he was digging, he was dragging heavy rocks out of the fields with his bare hands. His hands were permanently stained with dirt, his back was constantly aching, and his skin was leathery from the sun. He didn't take breaks. He ate his lunch standing up. He viewed rest as a weakness. He viewed sleep as the cousin of death. In his mind, every minute he wasn't working was a minute he was losing money and opportunity. Now, right next to Elias, separated only by a thin wooden fence, was another farm. This farm belonged to an old man named Silas. Silas was different. If you watched Silas, you would get frustrated just looking at him. Silas didn't wake up at 3:30 a.m. Silas woke up when the sun was already up. He would sit on his front porch in a rocking chair, drinking tea, just looking at his fields for an hour. He would walk through his rows slowly, touching the leaves, smelling the air, sometimes even closing his eyes and just feeling the wind. He worked, sure, but he took long breaks in the afternoon shade. He finished his day when the sun was still high enough to cast a shadow. To Elias, Silas looked lazy. Elias would look over the fence, wiping sweat from his eyes, his muscles screaming in pain, and he would see Silas sitting on the porch whittling a piece of wood. Elias would grit his teeth. He would think, just you wait. When the harvest comes, I will have 10 times what he has. I am putting in the hours. I am paying the price. The universe owes me this. The months rolled by. It was a brutal season. The rain didn't come when it was supposed to. The heat was intense. Elias doubled down. If the plants looked thirsty, he carried buckets of water by hand, running back and forth until his lungs burned. If the soil looked hard, he hit it harder with his hoe. He fought the land. He battled the elements. He was at war with his farm. He lost 20 pounds of weight. He looked 10 years older. But he kept telling himself, this is what it takes. This is the grind. This is what success looks like. Meanwhile, Silas was doing something strange. While Elias was frantically watering every single plant individually, Silas spent a week doing nothing but digging a trench from the nearby creek. He worked slowly, deliberately. He didn't rush. While Elias was hacking at the weeds every single day, Silas planted a specific type of clover cover crop between his rows and just let it sit there. Elias laughed to himself. He thought the old man had lost his mind. He's planting weeds, Elias thought. I'm winning. I have to be winning. Then came the harvest, the time of judgment, the time when the truth is revealed not by effort, but by fruit. Elias walked out into his fields with his sacks, ready to collect his fortune. But as he walked down the rows, his heart sank into his stomach. His corn was short and brittle. The ears were small, half-eaten by bugs or just empty. His wheat was thin and yellow. He fell to his knees in the dirt. He dug his hands into the soil he had battled for months. It was dry as bone. Despite all the buckets of water, despite all the sweat, the water had evaporated before it could reach the roots. The soil was so hard from him stomping on it and over-tilling it that the roots couldn't breathe. He had worked himself into the ground, and the ground had given him nothing but dust. He harvested maybe 3 sacks of usable grain. It wasn't even enough to cover the cost of the seeds. He was broke. He was broken. He looked over the fence. He saw a sight that made him dizzy. Silas's field was gold, tall, lush, green, and heavy with fruit. The corn was 7 feet high. The wheat was thick. Silas was out there with a small crew he had hired, calmly loading wagon after wagon of top-quality produce. Elias couldn't breathe. It didn't make sense. It defied the laws of physics as he understood them. He had worked 18 hours a day. Silas had worked maybe 6. He had bled for this. Silas had sipped tea. The unfairness of it washed over him like a tidal wave, rage, confusion, and a deep, terrifying sadness. He felt like the universe was playing a cruel joke on him. Have you ever felt that? Be honest. Have you ever looked at someone who seems to glide through life, getting the promotions, getting the recognition, making the money while you are drowning in your own effort? It burns. It makes you feel small. Elias walked to the fence. He looked like a ghost. His eyes were hollow. Silas saw him and stopped his wagon. He walked over, leaning on the fence post, looking at the younger man with kind eyes. Elias tried to speak, but his voice cracked. He cleared his throat. He pointed a trembling finger at Silas's field, and then at his own barren wasteland. He shouted, "How? Just tell me how, Silas. I watched you. You were lazy. I was out here in the dark. I was out here in the heat. I didn't stop. I didn't sleep. I sacrificed everything, and I have nothing. And you barely broke a sweat, and you have everything. What is the secret? Did you cheat? Did you use magic? Tell me." Elias was crying now, tears cutting tracks through the dust on his face. He was broken. Silas didn't get angry at the accusation. He didn't laugh. He opened the gate and stepped onto Elias's land. He knelt down and picked up a handful of Elias's soil. He crushed it. It turned to fine gray powder. It drifted away in the wind. "Look at this, Elias," Silas said softly. "This soil is dead. You worked it to death. You didn't give it time to recover. You didn't feed it. You just took from it. You thought that because you were suffering, you were succeeding. But the soil doesn't care about your suffering. The soil cares about what it needs." Silas stood up and pointed to his own field. "You saw me sitting on the porch, didn't you? You thought I was doing nothing. But I wasn't doing nothing, son. I was listening. I was observing. I noticed that the wind blows from the north in the morning, so I planted my tall crops there to shield the small ones. I noticed the water flows naturally to the lower basin, so I dug a trench to guide it there so I wouldn't have to carry buckets. I planted the clover not because I'm lazy, but because clover puts nitrogen back into the dirt so the corn can eat. I didn't work harder than you, Elias. I worked in alignment with the laws of the harvest. You were fighting the farm. I was partnering with it." This hit Elias like a physical blow. He realized in that moment that his entire philosophy of life was wrong. He had been worshiping the grind instead of respecting the process. He thought that pain was the currency of success. He thought that if he wasn't hurting, he wasn't working. But Silas showed him that struggle is not a virtue. Struggle is just a byproduct. If you are struggling constantly without result, you aren't a hero. You are inefficient. Silas looked at him and said the words that would change Elias's life forever, and maybe yours too. He said, "Elias, You are trying to be a mechanic, forcing the machine to work with a hammer. But a farmer is not a mechanic. A farmer is a partner to nature. You cannot force a seed to grow by yelling at it or sweating on it. You can only create the right environment for it to grow itself. You spent all your energy digging holes, but you never checked if the seeds were good. This is where the story pivots to you. Right now, watching this video, you are Elias. You are treating your life, your career, your body, and your relationships like a machine that you can beat into submission. You think that if you just send 500 more cold emails, if you just stay at the office until 9 p.m., if you just starve yourself on that diet, you will win. But you are just powdering the soil. You are killing the very thing you are trying to grow. You are exhausted because you're swimming upstream. You are trying to force doors open that are locked instead of looking for the window that is already open. This is the trap of the modern world. We are addicted to busyness. We wear our burnout like a badge of honor. We brag about how little sleep we get. But let me ask you, does your bank account care how tired you are? Does your future care how much you suffered? No. The only thing that matters is the harvest, and the harvest requires strategy, not just brute force. Think about the last time you really succeeded at something. Did it feel like a war? Or did it feel like a flow? Did it feel like you were pushing a boulder up a hill, or did it feel like you were riding a wave? Usually, the biggest breakthroughs come when we stop forcing and start aligning. When we step back, like Silas on his porch, and look at the big picture. Maybe the business you are trying to launch is not working, not because you're not working hard enough, but because the market doesn't want it. Maybe the relationship is failing not because you aren't trying, but because you're watering a dead plant. Maybe your body isn't changing, not because you aren't training hard, but because you aren't resting enough to let it grow. Elias wiped his face. He looked at Silas and asked, "Is it too late for me? Have I ruined it?" Silas smiled. "The land is forgiving, Elias, but only if you change your ways. You have to stop doing for a while. You have to start being. You need to let this field rest. It needs a season of silence, and you do too." That year, Elias didn't plant a single seed for harvest. It terrified him. He felt like a failure. But he did what Silas said. He planted cover crops to heal the soil. He fixed his fences. He slept 8 hours a night. He sat on his porch. And do you know what happened? He started to see things he had never seen before. He noticed where the sun hit the land best. He noticed where the water collected. He started to understand his farm not as a battlefield, but as a living system. He was recovering. His mind was clearing. The desperation was fading, replaced by a quiet confidence. We are back with Elias. The year of rest was the hardest year of his life, harder than the 18-hour days, because doing nothing when you are programmed to grind feels like dying. It feels like you are disappearing. But Elias held the line. He trusted Silas. He trusted the process. And slowly the soil began to change. The gray, powdery dust turned dark and rich. The earthworms returned. The smell of the land changed from dry dust to that deep, rich scent of life. Elias changed too. His back stopped hurting. His hands healed. His mind became sharp. He wasn't reacting anymore. He was planning. He wasn't frantic. He was focused. The next spring arrived. Elias walked out to the field, but this time he didn't bring his anxiety. He brought a plan. He planted half the seeds he used to plant. He spaced them out, giving them room to breathe, just as Silas had taught him. He didn't water them by hand. He used the irrigation trenches he had dug during the winter. He worked hard, yes, but he finished by 4 p.m. He spent his evenings reading, learning about crop rotation, learning about the market prices. He became a student of his craft, not just a laborer in it. The neighbors whispered. They said Elias had lost his edge. They said he had gone soft. "Look at him," they said, "quitting at 4 p.m. He'll be bankrupt by autumn." Elias heard them, but he didn't care. He knew something they didn't. He knew the soil was ready. Summer came, and the valley was hit with another heat wave. The neighbors who were grinding, who were overplanting and overworking, panicked. They were out there frantically trying to save their crowded crops. But Elias's crops were different. Because he had spaced them out, their roots had gone deep. deep down into the cool earth where the moisture was trapped. Because he hadn't over-tilled the soil, the ground held the water like a sponge. While the neighbor's corn withered, Elias's corn stood tall and green, drinking from the deep reserves he had allowed to build up. He didn't have to panic. He watched the heat wave from his porch, knowing his work had been done months ago. This is the power of preparation over panic. This is the power of depth over width. Harvest day came again, and this time it was a legend. Elias didn't just match Silas, he broke the county record. His wagons were overflowing. The quality of his produce was so high that the buyers in town got into a bidding war for it. He made more money in that one season than he had made in the previous 5 years combined. And he did it working half the hours. He stood there holding a check that would change his family's life, and he looked at his hands. They were calloused, yes, but they weren't bleeding. He looked at Silas, who was smiling from his porch. Elias raised his hand in a salute. He finally understood. He wasn't a ditch digger anymore. He was a master farmer. So, how do we take Elias's story and inject it into your veins right now? How do we turn this from a nice story into a weapon you can use to dominate your life? You need to audit your existence. You need to look at your field. Where are you grinding just for the sake of grinding? Where are you digging holes in dry soil? First, look at your career or business. Are you busy or are you productive? There is a massive difference. Busy is checking emails every 5 minutes, attending useless meetings, and multitasking until your brain melts. That is Elias in the first year. Productive is doing the deep work. It is picking the 1 or 2 things that actually move the needle and doing them with absolute focus, then stopping. It is better to send 5 incredibly thoughtful, researched emails to the right people than to spam 1,000 people with a template. Stop counting the hours. Start counting the impact. If you are working 12 hours a day and you are broke, stop working. Sit down. Think. Sharpen the axe. Second, look at your health. Are you destroying your body to make it look good? Are you sleeping 4 hours because you think sleep is for the weak? Listen to me. Your body is the soil. If you don't let it recover, it will turn to dust. You will get injured, you will get sick, and you will burn out. The strongest athletes in the world prioritize recovery just as much as training. Sleep is when the seeds grow. Rest is when the muscles build. If you aren't sleeping, you are just breaking yourself down without building yourself back up. Be like Silas. Respect the biological machine you live in. Third, look at your mind. You are consuming so much information. TikTok, Instagram, news, YouTube. You are cramming seeds into a field that is already full. You have no space to think. You have no space to process. You need to clear the weeds. You need periods of silence. You need to sit on the porch. Great ideas do not come when you are frantic. They come when you are calm. They come in the shower, on a walk, or in those quiet moments before sleep. If you are constantly plugged in, you are killing your creativity. You are killing your intuition. Disconnect to reconnect. The lesson of the farmer is not that hard work is bad. Elias still had to plant, he still had to harvest, he still had to sweat. But hard work without wisdom is a tragedy. Hard work without direction is just efficient self-destruction. You have to be brave enough to stop. You have to be brave enough to look lazy to the outside world while you are building your strategy internally. Let them talk. Let them brag about their 100-hour work weeks while they are running on fumes. You play the long game. You build the soil. You deepen the roots. Imagine yourself 1 year from now. If you keep doing exactly what you're doing today, will you be successful? Or will you just be older and more tired? If the answer is more tired, then you need to stop the tractor. You need to get off and check the dirt. It is scary to change. It is scary to slow down when the world is screaming, faster, faster, faster. But remember Elias. The year he slowed down was the year he won. The year he stopped fighting the earth was the year the earth gave him its gold. You have that same potential. You have a harvest waiting for you that is bigger than you can imagine. But you will never see it if you are too busy staring at your feet, hacking away at the weeds. Look up. Look at the horizon. Make a plan. Work smart first, then work hard. That is the order. Strategy, then execution. Silence, then action. I want you to do something for me. I want you to go down to the comment section right now. I want you to type 2 words. I'm growing. Not I'm working, not I'm grinding, but I'm growing. Let that be a signal to yourself and to this community that you are shifting your mindset. You are moving from the frantic Elias to the wise Elias. You are playing the long game. And if you know someone who is on the verge of burnout, someone who is trying so hard but getting nowhere, share this video with them. Don't let them suffer in the field alone. Be the Silas to their Elias. Send this to them and tell them, rest, then grow. This is Motivational Head. We don't just motivate you for 10 minutes, we change the way you see your life. If this story resonated with you, if you felt that relief in your chest, knowing you don't have to destroy yourself to succeed, then hit that like button. It helps us reach more farmers who are lost in the dark. And make sure you are subscribed. We have more stories, more strategies, and more truth coming your way. You are not a machine. You are a creator. Treat yourself with respect, work with wisdom, and the harvest will come. I believe in you. Now go tend to your field. I'll see you in the next one.